Good afternoon and good morning to everyone, depending on where you are joining us from. Thank you for joining this Relationship Audits webinar entitled Business Relationships Catch a Virus, What You Can Do About It. I'm Amy Boot, an account manager at Relationship Audits, and I'll be managing the webinar behind the scenes. Just before we get into the content, I just want to cover off a few housekeeping topics. Today's webinar is being recorded. However, only the panelists and myself will be heard. We will be putting the recording on our website in the blog section, so we welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with colleagues. We'd also like your questions. During the session, please use the Q&A function to submit any questions, which I will then pose to our speakers once they finish going through the learnings. I will now hand over to my colleague Adrian, who will introduce the subject and speakers of this webinar.
Thanks, Amy. Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian Dent, and I'm a senior consultant at Relationship Audits, and I'm going to be chairing today's webinar. I think most of you will know what we do, but for those of you that don't, we work for service providers and service buyers, and we help them get the best out of their business relationships. This involves talking to hundreds of people in different organisations all over the world on an ongoing basis to understand business relationships. And unsurprisingly, over the last 12 months, in light of the pandemic, there have been some very significant changes, not all of which might be immediately apparent, which is why we've put together this webinar, in which Simon Rhind-Tutt and Kerry Evans, the founding partners of Relationship Audits, are going to share some of what we've learned. We've got a lot of learnings, but we've picked 6 to focus on, covering a variety of areas, which are as follows: organisational structure, flexibility, communication, sharing learning, technology, and value for money. It should only take about 20 minutes for us to share those 6 learnings with you, and we're then going to invite questions. As Amy has said, you're welcome to use the Q&A function, normally at the bottom of your Zoom screen, to submit questions at any point, and we'll get through as many as we can later. But right now, I'm going to start with handing over to Simon Rhind-Tutt.
Thank you very much, Adrian. And as Amy said, good afternoon, good morning, and in some cases, good evening to you. You know, it's amazing to think that it's now over a year since COVID hit and many countries went into lockdown. Especially for the business services sectors, such as professional services, marketing services, most clients cut spending, and firms and agencies alike had to rapidly adapt, be it furloughing some staff or others putting people onto reduced days per week. What we saw was a real shakeout. And our research consistently showed that those with the best service and those with the best client relationships were undoubtedly the ones that fared better. And that's probably not surprising, because time-poor, job-insecure clients reverted to placing their work with those that they really considered to be trusted advisors. In fact, 66% of clients told us over that period that supplier performance during lockdown was likely to highly impact their intentions to work with them in the future. There were challenges though. Firms that put their staff onto shorter working weeks often faced frustrations from clients that in some cases couldn't get hold of some of their team when they needed them. And from hundreds of client companies that we've spoken to during and since, there hasn't been one, not one, that hasn't gone through some sort of management restructure. And many of the larger corporates now seem to be on a continual journey of reorganization. For many, the change of structure and operations has led to clients re-examining if their service providers are now fit for purpose going forward. So consequently, it's perhaps no surprise that we're seeing in many service categories a pitch frenzy, with many service providers, due to the sheer quantities of RFPs, having to turn down opportunities to tender. So what action can we take out of this? Well, there are 2 things that I would highlight that you may want to consider for your business. Firstly, simply ask yourself, how have your clients changed? And we'd suggest you take a hard look at if you need to restructure the way that you work with them. And secondly, confirm on a regular basis what your clients' expectations of you are, and indeed how you're performing against those expectations. The one thing not to do is to assume that they've stayed the same. Carey.
Thank you, Simon. So my question to you is, are you nimble enough? Why am I asking that? Well, when we start our sessions with clients and our service provider clients, what we tend to do is to ask the person with whom we're speaking to tell us about their expectations of their service provider. And one of the interesting things that we discovered last year, when there was so much uncertainty around, was that the proportion of people who talked about being flexible, agile, nimble, increased markedly in terms of the top 3 expectations that they had of their service provider. In fact, it went up from the low 30s to the mid 70% of top 3 expectations. And in fact, those suppliers and service providers who were not prepared to be flexible or who could not be flexible found that their perspective with the client changed, or at least the client's perspective of them changed. One grocery retailer told us a story of the way in which when the pandemic hit and there was the pandemic started and all the kind of stuff that happened around that, their agency, their advertising agency, were in fact constraining what they were doing because the holding company of the agency had said that everybody should work from home. And that had a huge impact on the grocery retailer's ability to generate ads quickly, which of course is crucial for a grocery retailer. Now, the reality is the way in which the supplier approached that problem was in fact the way in which the supplier has since become, in fact, a greater sense of loyalty from the client because they were innovative, they were reactive, they were nimble, and they were agile. So the simple thing from this is to say, in terms of actions, talk to your client and see what they tell you are their changing priorities. Secondly, review how you're structured and set up to deal with the changes that they've identified. And crucially, go to the clients with your ideas before they come to you. Simon.
Thanks, Carey. My next question for you is, are you still communicating with your clients in the best way? You know, we've all seen and probably suffered from the explosion in terms of Zoom, Teams, Blue Jeans, video communication. And in the absence of being able to meet in person, I suppose it was inevitable that people switched to wanting to have virtual FaceTime. However, the consequences have been that many of us are now spending huge amounts of their time on video calls, and we're hearing almost on a daily basis stories of real fatigue. Many enterprise clients and indeed their service providers are saying to us that they believe that this has resulted in just too many meetings. And for many, there is almost a paralysis about being able to get their work done. So also thank you for attending this Zoom meeting in passing. But seriously, there are a growing number of companies such as Citigroup, HSBC, for example, all starting to trial the concept of Zoom-free Fridays. Furthermore, at the start of the year, we ran a number of our Relationship Radar online surveys, where we asked about clients' intentions of going back to their offices, and also their intentions of visiting their suppliers. By the end of February, those results were showing that 69% of clients envisage only going into their own offices 3 days a week or less this year. Indeed, 9% said that they were now going to be working permanently from home. Furthermore, when asked about their anticipated intentions of visiting their service providers' offices, it was very, very stark. A third said it was too early to say, fair enough. But another third said it was unlikely that they would want to travel at all to their service providers' offices. And the other third said that they would, but the frequency would be a lot less. Now, interestingly, that last group of people also added that they would like the ability from time to time to work and meet their other colleagues at their service providers' offices. To be fair, we sense since last February that there might be, certainly in the UK with the penetration of vaccines, maybe a little more optimism about travelling to meetings. Nonetheless, we're seeing service providers downsizing their real estate and reconfiguring their offices to make them more collaborative. Furthermore, there seems to be an increasing number of companies who seem to be hedging their bets by moving to rented, shorter-term, flexible workspace and encouraging longer-term flexible working from their staff. So we reckon there are a number of action points coming out of that. Firstly, don't assume that everybody wants a Zoom call. Secondly, we'd suggest it's worth resetting with your clients what communication methods they prefer. And within that, re-evaluating, do you need a Zoom call, but also who needs to be on that call? Thirdly, recognize that in-person meetings, at least for the immediate future, are going to be a precious commodity. Particularly within service sectors such as professional services, marketing services, face-to-face meetings have been crucial to establishing and maintaining enduring relationships. And clearly, there are going to be less opportunities to meet in person. Therefore, there needs to be careful thought and organisation of how you can meet those clients face-to-face. Be it creating collaborative workspaces they'll want to safely visit, workspaces for them to hot desk from, but also importantly, ensuring that their key points of contact are in the office when they are. So you're able to have that important face time. All of that needs to be part of your strategy. Kerry.
Thanks, Simon. So my next question is, are you sharing your learning from other clients? A number of enterprise clients that we talked to in 2020 raised the issue of having to re-engineer some of the processes that they had previously taken for granted. Now, when you do that in an era of uncertainty, you kind of feel you need a bit of guidance and a bit of help. So in those circumstances, the service providers we found who were able to share what they had been doing for other of their clients successfully and what had not worked for those clients, gave the people who required answers what they felt was going to be an inside track, because it shortened the learning curve of those people who needed some answers. So the desire to hear what can be applied and reapplied seems a very, very sensible thing to do if you're a service provider trying to add value to your client relationship. The reality, however, is that clients don't see this behavior very often. It's a very easy thing to do. But while suppliers may merchandise and service providers may merchandise their case studies and their abilities and their learning at a pitch stage, in an ongoing situation, the practice seems to drop off. So, in fact, only 25% of the clients we speak to say that their service providers regularly share learning from other clients that can be applied to reapply to their situation. But the reality is that 100% of people, or 100% of clients, want it. One client told us that when she inherited her role, she also inherited 2 B2B agencies who had a roughly equal share of her business. Within the context of 2020, that ratio switched dramatically from 50-50 to around, in her words, 65-35, to the agency that repeatedly came to her with pieces of learning that she could reapply to her own situation. So the point is, the opportunity for the service provider to do this and gain competitive advantage is huge. So what's the learning? What's the action? Number 1, talk to the clients about the pinch points and the pain points that they're facing. Secondly, establish an internal forum within the organization, within the supplier organization, to identify what people have learned in different account groups and what can be reapplied elsewhere. Thirdly, proactively take successful ideas to your client. And finally, offer to put your clients in touch with other clients, because in our experience, a lot of clients would like to have that opportunity. Technology, are you better or worse at it than you think? It's important because over 70% of client companies consider that having leading edge technology as one of the key drivers of working successfully with service providers. Unfortunately, less than 40% feel they are truly up to speed with their suppliers' technological resources and competence. We've heard examples in both marketing services and professional services of how technology has given both competitive advantage and caused failure. One great example is of a digital agency who set up a global intranet for a global client of theirs to make the whole process of sharing creative assets much, much easier, given the situation in which everybody found themselves in working from home. And not only did that make life easier, but it saved money for their clients because of the way in which the whole process was managed. That was a win. On the other hand, we have two examples where the technological competence, in fact, did not give competitive advantage. One was in a pitch for a UK grocery retailer and an agency. And when that agency was in the final stages of the pitch, the technological resources and requirements became clearly set out by the client, and it appeared that the agency themselves did not have the relevant competence to deliver what the client really wanted, and therefore, notwithstanding all the other bits and pieces, they fell out of the race. And the second example is from a professional services firm who had a very conservative reputation in the marketplace, who lost out on more than one tender by not clearly enough merchandising its sophisticated technological competence, which is in fact ahead of most people's expectations of what they were able to offer. So what's this tell us? What are the actions? What's the learning? One, firstly, make sure you're on the front foot with your technology and ensure you keep your client updated on your competence. Two, wherever possible, review what your competitors are up to. And thirdly, talk to your clients about their positive experience of other organizations' technology and what you can learn from that and reapply. Simon.
Thank you very much, Gary. And last but not least, did you realize what drives the perception of value for money is changing? Well, results from the many surveys we've conducted during the pandemic clearly showed that things that have been typically used to judge value for money have been joined by some new factors. Value for money appears to be becoming less transactional in terms of money paid versus deliverables received. And what I mean by that is that soft factors, such as the quality of staff, people's attitudes, flexibility, and going the extra mile are becoming increasingly more valued. For many clients, we've seen this reflecting a growing desire for true business partnerships in these uncertain times. And that's probably why our data suggests that value for money is increasingly highly correlated with propensity to award more business. The only other thing that comes close to that is the quality of the team. So in terms of actions, very simply, firstly, take the time to ask your clients what they take into account when judging value for money. It isn't always necessarily the same as you think it might be. And continue to work on delivering all soft as well as hard measures. Secondly, make sure you're able to demonstrate your value for money against their desired and defined criteria. In our experience, Very few service providers have robust metrics in place that adequately demonstrate to their clients the true value of their investment. And clearly, the direction of travel is that key suppliers will consistently need to demonstrate that they can bring to the relationship what the client can't do themselves or take in-house. And then finally, in passing on this point, even before the pandemic, we heard almost on a weekly basis our own clients talking about the dearth of quality talent, particularly at junior and middle management levels. And in turn, their clients then often airing their frustration about the churn of staff on their team. We strongly think that as economies bounce back, and we see many of our clients have lots of vacancies, we can see the war for talent really hotting up. And holding on to key staff is likely to be a greater challenge even than it was pre the pandemic. So those are the 6 points. Let me hand back to Kerry to summarize, and then we'll move on to questions.
Thank you, Simon. So for those of you with a short memory, this is what we said. 6 questions to ask yourself. Is your organization fit for purpose at the moment? Genuinely, honestly, nimble and flexible enough? Are you absolutely sure you're communicating in the right way? Are you sharing learning from other clients to those clients who ask for help? Are you better or worse at technology than you think? And did you realize that what drives the perceptions of value for money seems to have changed in the last 12 to 15 months? Adrian.
Thanks very much, Simon and Kerry. We seem to be running to time, which means that obviously we haven't been attacked by animals or had Amazon deliveries or anything like that, which is great. So we can now move on to questions. We've already received a few. We'd appreciate more, so please feel free to lob those in our direction. We'll answer those in just a moment. But just in case anyone does have to leave, I wanted to say that we're going to email a document which summarises these particular learnings that we've been discussing to all of those who request it. So please do let us know by email, phone, whatever, if you would like us to send that to you. Otherwise, we'll be just deluging your already busy inboxes. We're also going to be putting a recording of the webinar in the blog section of our website. So you can watch that at your leisure with a bottle of gin or whatever is appropriate. Anyway, needless to say, if you're interested in help in assessing your business relationships, please do get in touch. If nothing else, you can, pick our brains and we'll give you our thoughts on what you might be able to do, how you might be able to approach this sort of an evaluation with whoever you might think that that's appropriate. Right, we're now ready for questions. So my job to hand over to our question master, Amy.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Adrian. And yes, we certainly have had a few interesting questions coming through. So the first one I'm going to pose is, I'm looking forward to learning what the speakers believe are the most valuable types of outsourced marketing or consulting service and why.
That's a very good question. I think, and I don't want to do a political fudge on this, but I think it really depends on your business and your objectives of what you're trying to actually achieve. So it's very difficult to actually answer that precisely without knowing what types of marketing and what the business challenge is. The one thing I would add is that if you are outsourcing your marketing, or indeed you're outsourcing any service, one of the key things to get outstanding service is to ensure that you have a quality relationship. And the best quality relationships are those that feel like a real partnership to both sides. Kerry, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think you've absolutely nailed it, Simon. I think that's exactly the issue. So yeah, agree entirely.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. And a next question, directed at Kerry, questions of confidentiality. Working in the aid and development industry, find coordination and collaboration are buzzwords, but substance of sharing learning. Do we look at becoming network nodes, knowing learning will become less proprietary? Proprietorial, whatever that word is.
You've been drinking, Amy.
Proprietorial.
Thank you.
I think what you're asking is the degree of confidentiality involved in sharing learning. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But the reality is that what we find is that it's quite easy to give people ideas of what you've done for someone else that has worked, but typically the critical thing is to ensure that what you do is you don't have to breach any confidentialities in our experience. You can simply explain what the problem was. You can simply explain what you did about it, and then talk about the outcomes. And that's the most important thing, obviously, is the outcomes. And if you've really done your homework, what you do is ensure that you look at those examples and you explain to the recipient how their particular situation, which clearly will not be exactly the same as your case study, how their particular situation can be addressed by, if you like, by turning a dial here and pushing a switch there. So in other words, you customize it. And our experience is that if you can do that, if you can bring the right example, as I said earlier on, then that experience is massively valued because it gives the client individual the inside track and allows them to get to where they need to be quicker.
Kerry, can I just also add to that, and I would agree 100% with everything that you've said. I think we're hearing lots of stories of clients wanting to benefit from not only, if you like, industry expertise, but also operational expertise.
Yeah, that's true.
The desire to restructure, to do things differently. They don't want to operate in isolation. And so bringing examples of how different organizations are actually working with that firm or that agency is something that is of huge value. And of course, if you're bringing that learning, you're then the trusted advisor to that client in terms of how they go about reshaping. The second thing I would also say, just building on that, is that we work with lots of clients, let's say law firms who've got lots of financial services or construction experience, or ad agencies that have got lots of FMCG experience. Clients are desperate for thought leadership. And in terms of thought leadership, think of it along the lines of not only making the service provider look good, but making the people that you're presenting to being given useful information that they can look good within their own client organization. And that let's say you're a law firm that has a number of financial services clients. The aggregating the non-confidential parts of learning and future trends is a presentation that you can construct once and maybe take to half a dozen or a dozen clients as a piece of added value, albeit tailored. There isn't enough of that going on. It seems to us to be an easy and relatively quick win.
Yeah, I absolutely say that. I mean, I think that this whole notion of leveraging your learning is simple to do if you put the prep in, right? You've in every service provider, be it law firm, accountancy firm, or agency, you will have success stories. And if you can, as a group, create a reservoir of these stories, these case studies, these positive outcomes, then it's a resource for the business that they can use and reuse when the situation is relevant. The trick here is to keep relevance in your mind, because if you show any old case study that's got no relevance to a particular client situation, then you've just demonstrated that you don't understand their business. And that's critical. That's the starting point for making this work, that you understand and you demonstrate and they believe that you understand their business.
Can I just jump in here, because there's a point that Simon alluded to just then that I think is very, very powerful in a number of different areas. And that's actually helping your client look good in their organization. Because so often, if you think about people around a table, think about people at the other end of a video call, the thing that's actually most important to them is only their career. It's how they're going to progress. It's, earning money, it's putting bread on the table, etc., etc. So the better you make them look, the better you're likely to fare. And one of the things that will really help them is having information that is valuable to their organization that they can present. So this doesn't just come from leveraging learning, it comes from all sorts of different areas. But if you can think about basically giving your clients a leg up within their organization, that's likely to be very helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. I think that was a very well formatted answer. So moving forward, we've had another one come in. So it says, do the panelists have a view on how clients, brackets professional services, want to receive a service provider's learning? Followed by a, hi, Kerry, Simon, great to see you both.
Right, okay. The answer is that it changes. And that, again, one of the themes that has come through from these 6 points is the need to continually ask and ask and ask. And everybody is more time poor, and therefore the need to ensure that you're delivering information and knowledge and learning in the most appropriate way is something that, again, possibly you need to actually reset. In terms of a general point, the shorter the better. Bullet points, succinct. I hope with some of you we get gold star for actually only having a 20-minute talk rather than going on for 55 minutes and 5 minutes questions. That's deliberate, because that's what we're hearing back from clients. Keep it short and sharp. There's one other thing I would add. We've done a fair bit of work over the last couple of years with data consultancies, data analysts, and it's interesting talking to their clients about how they want to receive the analysis back. And what we've learned is that when you're presenting data, there are some clients that like it as numbers, there are some clients that like it as charts, and there are some clients that like it as tables. And the best consultancies that had the best relationships presented the data all three ways, so that their clients could actually receive it in the manner that was convenient to them. I'm sorry it's not a cut and dried answer, but I think really at the end of the day, need to ask your clients and consistently update and review whether you're providing that in the right places.
Dead right.
Kerry.
Dead right. You know, you give your clients the stuff they want in the way they want to receive it. Simple.
Okay.
We just had a response, if I can jump in here, to what we've just been talking about, which is the balance of bearing in mind individuals and organisations when we're dealing with clients. And it's a point made by Paul, which is well made, which is how nicely this links to what's been a recent trend across marketing and businesses, which is all about the idea of purpose. And I think that connecting with people as much as organisations and understanding the way in which they mutually benefit each other and others beyond their organisations is actually very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving forward, specifically as a design and advertising agency, what would your advice be to focus your outbound email campaigns to drive new business for the agency right now?
Okay. I think targeted rather than broad scale. I would think focus on not only your experience, but really focus on your prospects' pain points. What are the issues that are actually facing them, and how can you address those best? And I think in terms of outward bound marketing, all you can do is sell a conversation. So a lot of agencies make the huge mistake of saying, this is us, when can we start? You know, any professional service, any marketing service partnership, let's call it, starts with a relationship being built. And the first port of call I would suggest would be addressing a pain point on a highly targeted one-on-one email and trying to actually sell a meeting. I think the other thing that our clients have told us, and in fact we've learned ourselves, is that if you have a highly targeted email, you may have to send 2 or 3 reminders via LinkedIn before you get a response. I think, Kerry, our own experience is the same.
Yeah, I mean, we've done some outbound marketing, and that's exactly the point, right? So the first one, the first email that you send raises the proposition. The second one says, "Did you see my email?" The third one says, "Really, honestly, have you seen my email? Would you like me to resend it?" Not in those words, I have to say. But we found that the traction we got from new business prospects was significantly higher on the on the third reminder that we sent. So that's definitely the way to do it. And as Simon says, I couldn't agree more. It's all about just starting a conversation, starting to, quote, build a relationship. And a great analogy that we came up with a long time ago, I think, is that when you start off in this relationship, it's a bit like walking on a moving walkway. You know, you kind of start at one end and you want to get to the other end, and you slowly get further along that as you develop. And again, it's about using baby steps to build a relationship with the people that you're talking to. And as Simon says, I absolutely agree, which is about focus, not broadcast.
And can I just also add one other point on this? One of my clients years ago told me about what he called the corn analogy. CORN, and if you wrote CORN and then you drew a line underneath it, and he said that the easiest clients to get, or the easiest new business, is from the people that you're working with, albeit a lot of service providers don't put enough value on that in terms of their new business strategy. So that's C for current, O is for old, people that are lapsed. Some of you will know that we undertake what we call lost pitch audits to find out why service providers come second. But what is very interesting is that those people that we speak to on lost pitch audits have often had some relationship with the agency or firm before. But old clients are hugely influential and are the second easiest. Third are referred. So making sure that you're connected with your clients on LinkedIn, for example, and finding out who they're connected to and asking for referrals. And it's the N, the totally new clients that you've got no relationship with, that take the longest. And the more pushy you are, unless you've got a dream of a sale, the more trouble you're going to have.
Yeah,
I'll jump in.
So can I just one thing? You know, for me and for Simon, the cardinal sin at the end of the email is, "We'd like to have a meeting with you." You know, which just raises the reaction of, "Well, I don't want to have a meeting with you." You know, so the tone and manner of your communication is critical, and it's got to be about, you know, dangling the bait, talking about what you can do for them based on what you've done for others. And so the tone and manner of your communication is critical.
It does come down to relationships, but I think something that's worth sharing is we're doing a lot of work, obviously, at the moment, talking to service buyers and talking to their service providers. And one of the words that's coming out most strongly is partnership. And in the last 12 months, we found service buyers almost asking in what other areas the service providers could be helping them, because they would actively like to benefit their businesses. They feel as though it's a true partnership. And in terms of their internal culture, philosophy, principles, all the things that they're trying to deliver on, building partnerships with valuable organizations, whether they be suppliers, business partners, whatever, it's high on the agenda. And it's been extraordinary. We've had conversations coming out of which we've turned around to a service provider and said, look, they would like you to work on this, or you must speak to this person in that organization. So there is an open door to be pushed on with a lot of current clients. As Kerry and Simon have said, when it comes to new clients, the key word is relationship. What would make them interested in having a conversation? Because until you get to that point, everything else just looks like a sales mechanic.
Amy, are there more?
There are indeed. So the next one that comes in is, what technologies are you finding are the best for virtual collaboration sessions?
I think I think there's no simple answer to that. I think, I mean, one of the challenges of the one of the challenges of the pandemic is that it's been a bit like trying to learn a whole bunch of new languages, right? So you say, let's have a video conference, and so that sounds a very simple conversation, right? And then, of course, what you get is the conversation about what kind of video conference are you going to have? Is it going to be on Teams? Is it going to be on Zoom? Is it going to be on Blue Jeans? Is it going to be on Google Hangouts? And our experience is that some of these work better than others. And again, so, you know, with individuals. So, for example, whenever I do Google Hangouts, it's a nightmare for me. And it isn't for other people. So I think the perspective is to say, if you're going to have virtual conversations with people, is to make sure to what Simon said earlier on, it's about understanding the communication preference. What one would you like to use? I think our judgment is, I don't think we feel technically competent enough to kind of rate one video conferencing brand versus another. We use them all. But the reality is that whatever's most important, whatever most is the preference for individuals would seem to be the best way of doing it. But we go back to the issue that, you know, the relationship can be maintained, in our judgment, not simply by using video conferencing. And sometimes, you know, we did some work for a big telecoms company in the US last year, and one of the things, and they wanted to have around 50 depth interviews undertaken with both their own staff and by the staff of their key communications agencies. And the individuals participating were asked how they'd like to do this. And 80% of the people who were asked said, can we just speak on the phone? So again, we go back to the point we made earlier on about communication preferences. The crucial thing here is about understanding how people want to interact with you, and then understand what variety of interaction they want, and then understand, if that's video conferencing, which one they would prefer to use.
But I think also just let's just move on. But to whoever asked the question, there are some names of other collaboration tools that some of our clients use that I'd be happy to actually share. But equally, I'd just say to everybody in the audience, if there are collaboration tools that you like and you rate, please send us the list and we'll share that with everybody.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I've certainly done some work with one of our agency clients who via a sort of a remote whiteboard, which was fascinating and a completely new thing for me to do as a techno baby, as they say. But it was an amazing experience to learn about different ways of doing what we've all done in a particular fashion in the past.
Okay,
Amy,
great.
have we got time for a couple more?
I think we have
one or two more.
One or two. Let's keep testing you guys. So are you seeing less client loyalty post-pandemic?
Kerry, do you want to say that?
Yeah, you know what? Yes and no. I mean, that's the reality. Those service providers who have really rolled up their sleeves, been flexible, listened, done all those good things we talked about earlier on, guess what? They are on the kind of favored supplier, preferred supplier perspective of their clients. And the indications are that they will continue to prosper from client loyalty after this thing is all over. And that those who haven't delivered in the way that their competitors have will suffer as a result. So we do know that there are, as Simon said, loads and loads of kind of pitches and tenders going on because people are taking stock of the situation now as we come out of this pandemic. And there will be winners and losers. But the reality is it's not simply there's going to be less client loyalty or more client loyalty. It depends. It depends on how you perform during the pandemic. Simon?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, as many of you know, we have a tool called the Client commitment index, where we measure relative commitment levels, and undoubtedly it's fallen for many clients, for many service providers from their clients a little in the last year. But I think we're going to go into a funny time. We're going to go. We've been through a 12-month period, 16-month period of uncertainty. I kind of think we're in a kind of medium uncertainty level over the next year or two as we come out. And I think the key thing is that what you don't want to do is to, if you're a service provider, to make your client nervous or give them any reason to actually worry, and therefore staying on top of your client relationship, understanding their business, regularly checking in to check that the quality of the relationship is good and that you're meeting their expectations has never, ever been more important.
Yeah, you know, I got to just jump in on that one, because this whole expectations thing is fascinating. As I said at the beginning of my talk, you know, we regularly start when we do interviews with people to ask them about their expectations, and it's an amazing statistic that we've amassed over the last few years, whereby when we ask clients that we're interviewing on behalf of service provider clients, we say to them, have you ever been asked by your service provider, by the people that commission us and others, have you ever been asked about what your expectations of them are? And it's fascinating. 61%, this number sticks in my mind all the time, 61% of the clients that we talk to said, no, my service provider's never asked me my expectations, but what my expectations are of them, which is quite bizarre if you think about it. Why wouldn't you ask your client what you think to tell you what they want from you? But it happens, and people assume, and this also happens when new people come in at the client end, and the service provider assumes that the expectations of the new person will be the same as those of the old person. So it's all about, you know, it's all about understanding, and if you don't ask your client about their expectations, then you're missing out.
It's a very good point, because our business is understanding these sorts of things. And when we go and talk to clients, we're always amazed that they say, well, wow, this is the first time that we've talked about this, been asked that, thought about the other, etc., etc. And this becomes a really powerful tool to open up growing that piece of business. Now, clearly, a lot of the clients that we work with, look into their client relationships, are pretty sophisticated and do a job that is already working very well. We help them finesse that. We help them move that forward. But I was quite surprised the other day. I ran a poll on LinkedIn, and the question was whether anyone had spent any money externally in the last year on business relationships. And the result was that less than 10% of people have, which I thought was amazing. Now, if business relationships really are so unimportant, good luck, because that's not what the clients think. And what's really important is to recognize that investing in relationships is about that word investing. It's not spending, it's not a cost. And if we were to look at the ROI that's achieved by people that do ask the right questions, commit to learning what their clients really want and deliver, it's very strong. Now, you know, you could use whoever you want to do that, but it needs to be external. It needs to be somebody with real sophistication. But I would challenge anyone listening. I would say, okay, why don't you just consider what it would cost if you lost a piece of business, or if you gained a piece of business? What's the amount of money? Put a figure against that, and then decide whether it's worth talking to somebody about getting some learning for you, because then you can purely see it as an experiment. See what happens. But I think if you invest in relationships, you could end up with a very strong result.
Okay, guys, great. I think we've got time for one last question and then we'll wrap up. So what's your experience of clients using the pandemic as a reason to reduce budgets, and how would you respond? Oh, I flummoxed you.
No, I'm just trying to think through that. I'm just trying to think through some client conversations. I mean, interestingly, again, I don't think that this is necessarily a blanket truth. Certainly, some of the clients I've been speaking to have talked about how they have in fact increased their spending during the pandemic. for all kinds of different reasons in different markets. And the beneficiaries of that increased spending when it happens tend to be those people who are delivering all the kind of attributes that we talked about earlier on. So I think that if people are using the pandemic as a reason for saying, well, we can't spend because of the pandemic, then maybe that's, I don't know, but maybe that's masking some underlying issues that are prevalent in the relationship.
Can I just add to that? I think, and we've touched on it before, the best business relationships are partnerships. And partnerships mean that there are swings and roundabouts in terms of both sides. If clients are cutting budget because they're saying because of the pandemic, I think that's a pretty good reason why they need to actually cut the budget. And I think rather than digging your heels and going, oh, like a sport child saying it's not fair, it's a case of sitting down and saying, right, what's the issue? What do we need to do? What do we need to do differently? And I think the important thing is, how can we maintain the relationship, even at a limited sense, over the next few months until you come out of it? And then how can we get back to normal, or, bounce back, etc. I think, listening, understanding, reconfiguring, and staying close to people. I always believe that you find out who your real friends are when you're in the poo. And that is absolutely true in personal relationships, but also I think it's true in business relationships. And if you can stand by and help your clients when they're going through a tough time, you're more than better placed to actually benefit from that when the going gets good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, fantastic.
People remember those people who stand by them,
I think we're probably out of time, Amy, are we?
We are, yeah, we're all done. Thank you very much. Any questions that came through that we didn't get a chance to answer, we will come back to you, of course. I'll now hand over to Adrian.
Well, thanks very much indeed for being with us for this last, I guess, 50 minutes. Thanks for your company, albeit virtual. I hope you enjoyed the session and found it useful. As we've mentioned a couple of times, hopefully this will have made you think a little bit about business relationships and work out how you might be able to benefit your business by looking at them carefully and working with your clients. So we wish you the very, very best in that. And if we can possibly help, then we'd be delighted to do that. But thanks again for your attendance. I hope you have a good end to the day. And looks like we've kept pretty well to time. So thanks a lot. Bye from us all.
Cheerio. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.